James Coburn's fluid 0.17-second draw looked like impossible perfection as the chronometer froze on a number that defied human capability. His movement had been so graceful it resembled water flowing rather than mechanical action. Then Steve McQueen stepped into the fading Mexican light, and the entire atmosphere changed from artistic demonstration to something that felt like watching death make an appointment. The difference between a performer and a gunfighter, it turned out, wasn't measured in milliseconds. The desert wind suddenly carried the scent of something more dangerous than gunpowder. If you respect the real Steve McQueen, subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy. April 1960. Tepoztlan, Mexico. 3 miles from the magnificent 7 filming location, where the cast had discovered an isolated stretch of dried riverbed perfect for private practice sessions away from cameras, crew supervision, and the diplomatic constraints of professional set behavior. The sun hung low on the western horizon, painting everything in shades of copper and gold that made the desert landscape look like a romantic painting of the American frontier rather than the harsh Mexican reality, where temperatures could kill unprepared visitors. Shadows growing longer as the day's brutal heat began its slow retreat toward the cool relief that only came with evening in this unforgiving climate. Ancient volcanic rock formations jutted from the earth like monuments to geological forces that had shaped this terrain millions of years before Hollywood discovered its cinematic potential. The air shimmered with heat distortion that made distant objects look unstable and dreamlike. The air carried the scent of sagebrush and the metallic residue of gunpowder from afternoon target practice. Red dust settled on everything like fine powder, coating leather holsters and making metal surfaces too hot to touch without gloves. This was neutral ground, where 2 different approaches to screen gunfighting could be tested without the diplomatic constraints of professional set behavior. James Coburn, 32 years old, stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, with the loose-limbed grace of someone who'd learned to make his unusual height an advantage, rather than an awkwardness in a business that favored more conventional physical types. Playing Brit in the Magnificent 7, the knife-throwing expert who could handle both blades and bullets with equal deadly precision, he'd spent months perfecting techniques that most actors would consider beyond their professional requirements. His movements carried the fluid quality of someone who'd studied martial arts philosophy and applied those principles to firearms training, understanding that true mastery came from eliminating unnecessary tension and effort. Everything Coburn did looked effortless, natural, like violence performed by someone who understood it as an art form rather than a brutal necessity. He moved like water flowing around obstacles, adapting to circumstances without losing essential character or direction. His approach to weapons training reflected years of studying human movement and mechanics, combined with natural athletic ability that made complex actions look deceptively simple. Steve McQueen, 30 years old, positioned 20 feet away with the compact intensity of someone who treated every physical challenge as a test of character rather than mere skill demonstration. Playing Vin Tanner, the professional gunfighter whose reputation came from surviving encounters that killed other men, he'd approached the role with characteristic determination to master every aspect of authentic performance. His methodology involved understanding not just technique, but the psychological and physical realities that technique served. McQueen's approach to weapons training had nothing to do with aesthetics, and everything to do with effectiveness under pressure that could mean the difference between life and death. Watching Coburn's demonstration with professional appreciation that carried no trace of envy or insecurity, just the focused attention of someone who understood that different approaches could serve different purposes equally well. 2 friends testing the boundaries of their respective capabilities in territory that belonged to neither Hollywood nor Mexico but to something older and more permanent. For 30 minutes, Coburn had been demonstrating the quick-draw technique that had made him one of Hollywood's most sought-after action performers. Each draw executed with balletic precision that made mechanical movement look like choreography, designed by forces beyond human understanding. His custom Colt .45 appeared in his hand like magic, fired with perfect accuracy, and returned to leather in movements so smooth they seemed to violate basic principles governing normal human capability. The wooden targets positioned at varying distances bore testimony to his accuracy. Clean holes punched through aged lumber with mechanical precision, grouped tightly. No wasted shots, no missed opportunities, no evidence of anything except complete mastery. "Watch this one, Steve," Coburn said, his voice carrying the relaxed confidence of someone who'd mastered every aspect of his chosen craft. "I've been working on eliminating the last few milliseconds of unnecessary movement." He positioned himself facing a target made from a wooden crate positioned 30 feet away, feet set in a stance that somehow managed to look both professional and artistic. Weight distributed with mathematical precision. Hand hanging beside his holster with the relaxed readiness of someone who understood that tension was the enemy of speed. The draw was instantaneous and perfect. One moment his hand hung relaxed beside the holster. The next moment, a gun had materialized in his grip, fired 3 shots that punched through the wooden target with mechanical precision, and disappeared back into leather before human eyes could track the complete sequence of movement. The chronometer displayed 0.17 seconds. "Jesus, Jim," McQueen said quietly, genuine admiration in his voice. "That's not human speed. Thank you. Took 2 years of daily practice to reach this level. 4 hours a day, every day, perfecting the mechanics until conscious thought was eliminated from the process. 0.17 of a second, faster than most people's nervous systems can process visual information. At this speed, the gun appears and fires before opponents realize movement has started." McQueen walked to the target Coburn had hit. Examined the 3 holes punched through wood with mechanical precision. Perfect grouping. Professional accuracy delivered at speeds that made conventional training seem inadequate. "Jim, that's incredible, really. Most beautiful quick-draw technique I've ever seen." "Appreciate that, Steve. Coming from someone with your natural ability, that means something. But can I ask you something about the approach?" "Sure." "When you draw at that speed, what's your mindset?" Coburn considered the question with the thoughtfulness he applied to all aspects of character development. "I'm thinking about perfecting the mechanical execution, eliminating inefficiency, making the movement as smooth and fast as humanly possible. Technical perfection. Exactly. The goal is to execute movement that approaches the theoretical limits of human capability." "That's interesting. How so?" McQueen adjusted his own holster, making small modifications that prioritized different values than Coburn's setup. "Because I don't think about technique at all when I draw." "What do you think about?" "Killing whoever I'm facing before they can kill me." The distinction hung in the air like gun smoke. Coburn understood that McQueen was describing something fundamentally different from the artistic approach that had made Coburn famous for action sequences across multiple productions. "Different mental approach to the same physical action?" Coburn asked. "Different purpose for the same physical tools. Meaning?" "Meaning your draw is designed to impress people with superior technique. Mine is designed to end fights before they become contests." McQueen walked to his own firing position, but his setup looked nothing like Coburn's optimized demonstration stance. No careful positioning or mathematical precision. Just natural readiness that somehow suggested more danger than all of Coburn's technical perfection. "Jim, want to see something?" "Absolutely." "This isn't really a technique demonstration. It's more like a reminder about what gunfighting actually involves when it's not performance." McQueen positioned himself facing the target, but his stance carried none of Coburn's balletic preparation. Weight shifted slightly forward. Hand positioned for access rather than optimal mechanics. Everything arranged for function rather than form. The transformation was subtle but complete. The friendly colleague disappeared. The professional actor stepped aside. What emerged was something that looked like it belonged in actual frontier violence rather than Hollywood choreography. "Watch," McQueen said quietly. What happened next redefined everything Coburn thought he understood about speed, technique, and the relationship between performance and lethality. McQueen drew his weapon, but Drew suggested visible movement that human eyes could track and analyze. What actually occurred was instantaneous transition from stillness to lethal readiness. No balletic grace or technical perfection, no visible sequence of mechanical actions. Just sudden, absolute efficiency that made Coburn's artistic approach look like elaborate theater. 3 shots cracked across the desert so quickly they sounded like one extended explosion. 3 holes appeared in the wooden target, grouped so tightly they could be covered with a playing card. The gun disappeared back into leather before the sound of the shots finished echoing across the dried riverbed. Coburn stood completely still, his artistic confidence replaced by something that looked like professional recognition mixed with genuine concern. Not fear, but the uncomfortable understanding that he'd just witnessed something that transcended entertainment to reach territory he couldn't categorize. "Steve," Coburn said slowly, "that wasn't faster than my draw." "No, it wasn't. But it was something else entirely." "How so?" "My draw is about perfecting technique. What you just did felt like watching technique become unnecessary." McQueen nodded with approval for Coburn's analysis. "You understand the difference. I understand that we're solving different problems, even though we're both drawing guns." "Right. You're demonstrating mastery of mechanical processes. I'm implementing solutions to survival problems." The evening light was fading now, painting the desert landscape in shades of purple and gold that made both men look like figures from American mythology rather than contemporary actors. Both understanding that their conversation had moved beyond professional technique to fundamental questions about the purpose of screen violence. "Jim," McQueen said as he checked his weapon one final time, "your speed is extraordinary. Really. You've achieved something that 99% of people couldn't achieve with years of dedicated practice." "Thank you. But it's performance. All acting is performance. Some performance looks like performance. Other performance looks like necessity." Coburn began packing his equipment, understanding that this conversation had introduced variables that artistic training didn't address. "Steve, are you saying that my approach doesn't serve the character effectively?" "I'm saying that your approach serves a character who can afford to make gunfighting look beautiful." "And your approach?" "My approach serves a character who needs to win gunfights regardless of how winning looks. Both valid for different kinds of characters, both authentic for different kinds of men." As they prepared to return to the hotel, Coburn looked back at the targets they'd been practicing against. His holes showed perfect technique executed with artistic precision. McQueen's holes showed something more unsettling, efficiency that suggested no interest in anything except immediate, permanent solutions. "Steve, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you think audiences can tell the difference between performance and necessity when they're watching screen violence?" McQueen considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I think they can feel the difference, even if they can't articulate what they're feeling." "And which do you think they prefer?" "I think they prefer whatever serves the story most authentically. Sometimes that means beautiful technique. Sometimes that means ugly effectiveness." "And the Magnificent Seven?" "The Magnificent Seven requires both. Your character needs to look like he's mastered violence as an art form. My character needs to look like he's survived violence as a daily reality. Different kinds of authenticity for different dramatic functions. Different kinds of truth for different kinds of heroes." The walk back to camp was conducted in comfortable silence, both men understanding that they'd received instruction that went beyond quick-draw technique to the essence of screen presence and character authenticity. As they reached the edge of the filming location, Coburn turned to McQueen one final time. "Steve, what you demonstrated out there, that felt like watching someone who'd actually killed people for a living." "That's the goal. Make the character believable when he's doing things that most people hope they'll never have to do. Even if it means sacrificing beauty for effectiveness? Especially then. Because real danger doesn't care about aesthetics." The Mexican evening settled around them like a blanket woven from heat, dust, and the understanding that some conversations change how people approach their craft permanently. Both men would carry this lesson into every future performance. The knowledge that technique serves character, but character determines which kind of technique serves authenticity best. James Coburn's fluid 0.17-second draw looked like impossible perfection, until Steve McQueen showed him the terrifying difference between a performer and a gunfighter. Subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy for stories they never told you.